Hello and welcome. My name is Sebastian Patino, and this is Bastion Academy. Bastion Academy is a podcast series and YouTube channel that covers everything about human physiology, health, and mindset. Today, we're going to be discussing training beyond performance. So, a lot of people love training for aesthetics. A lot of people think looking good equals feeling good and being healthy, when in reality, that's not always the case. And so the first subject I want to talk about is the overall health fallacy. There's a major health fallacy that a lot of people believe in nowadays, and it's that being lean, muscular, super fast, super strong means that you're healthy. And obviously, it's context dependent. Obviously, some people who are lean, muscular, super fast, super strong are healthy. And obviously, all those traits do help in becoming very healthy. However, you can absolutely take it to the extreme. Exercise and performance, your ability to run fast, to be super strong, it all follows a curve of diminishing returns. You go past a certain point, it is no longer beneficial for the human body. And so there are plenty of people with low body fat who have diabetes or cardiovascular disease. There's tons of examples on that. Large amounts of muscle does not mean they can use it well, right? A huge bodybuilder such as Chris Bumstead over here can go out and try to sprint or try to jump, and they can immediately injure themselves because they don't know how to use their body or their muscles. They simply know how to move a heavy weight from point A to point B. Bodybuilding in general is a great case study for why this statement is false. You will see tons of bodybuilders who look phenomenal, and they obviously put in a ton of discipline and work to get there. I used to be this way as well. I used to train strictly for performance, strictly for looks. I used to be a bodybuilding competitor myself, and I loved it until I didn't. And there's absolutely a great point to bodybuilding: the amount of discipline, the amount of overall growth that you can experience as an individual from being so monotonous with your training and nutrition is something that cannot be denied. And that's why a lot of people get into it. It's almost like a religion to them. However, looking good like this, being shredded, does not mean you are healthy. There are essential levels of body fat. For women, it is a little bit higher, and for men, it tends to be lower. Essential levels of body fat for men is typically around 3 to 5% body fat. Women, it's somewhere around 8 to 10% body fat. And essentially, when you go below this level of essential body fat percentage, your body starts to fall apart, right? Fat is very important for hormone production. It actually makes up the membranes of all of your cells, including your brain. So it's very important that you have enough fat to cushion your joints, to take care of your hormones, to create certain neurotransmitters and essential hormones again in your body to help propel the human body forward. And with not enough fat on your body, you will start to feel really low energy. You'll start to feel wired. You won't be able to sleep because your body is constantly signaling to you that something is wrong. You're signaling to your body that there is not enough energy around you, that you're starving. And this can lead to a whole host of problems. Women start losing their menstrual cycles. Men start getting extremely low levels of testosterone. They lose their libido. And this is also seen with extreme endurance and strength sports, right? There's a level of diminishing returns that you experience with all of these. And especially in endurance sports, when you're running 100 miles a week, it might sound insane, but there's a lot of endurance athletes who do this. They start to see significant and predictable drops in their levels of testosterone, the levels of sex hormones. And it's because your body is trying to compensate for the sheer level of stress and activity that it's outputting. It's trying to save any amount of energy that it can, and that means reducing the production of certain hormones. Same thing for strength sports, such as powerlifting. You have extremely, extremely strong individuals, but they end up having problems like you would not believe. They end up getting disc herniations if they're too strong. They end up getting bone spurs. They end up getting injured or having too high levels of bone density. They can start to get so strong that muscles become extremely tight. They're not very mobile, and they can get injured very easily if they move at all outside of their typical movement patterns, the squat, the bench, the deadlift. And so having muscle and being lean absolutely helps, but it's part of a much larger equation for health. And just like anything, if you do too much of something, you take too much of something, it will become bad for you. So health, how I look at health, is more of a total holistic approach. And you have to be good at a lot of things to be overall healthy, right? You can't just specialize in one. I've competed in marathons. I've done bodybuilding, I've done half marathons, I've done high rocks. I have pushed my body to its extremes. I've broken my body many times throughout this process. I've done powerlifting as well. I've dedicated, during these training phases, I would dedicate my entire being to being just a powerlifter, to being just a bodybuilder, to being just a marathon runner. And I saw firsthand exactly how that breaks down the body, right? It's a wonderful accomplishment. There's so much to be found in your mind, in your spirituality, when you dedicate yourself to such a hard process and your training. But again, it's not the same as taking care of your body from a health perspective. And it is wild to me how so many people still believe that just because you run the marathon or just because you do an Ironman means that you're healthy. I see this all the time. People will say, "Oh, you should do an Ironman," and I'll bring up, that is not healthy. I'm not going to survive that. I'm going to have to lose a bunch of weight, and they look at me confused. Or marathon training. People will sometimes say, "Oh, that's not very healthy." I think. No, let me be very clear here. Training for something like running 26.2 miles in under 2 hours or close to 2 hours is not what the human body was designed for. Same thing with bodybuilding. Reaching essential levels of body fat and pushing yourself to become starved to the point that you can see individual muscle fiber striations on stage is not what the human body was designed for. You're pushing it to its limits. The human body loves to be in homeostasis. It loves to have everything be happy and healthy. It is not like it when you push it to its extremes. And yes, that gives you cool results. And that's why we have all these sports. That's why we have these public displays of performance. And that's why people get paid a lot of money for it. But do not confuse performance with health. It is not health. Is it better than sitting on the couch? Sure. For a lot of people, it can be. And so now with the fitness industry, many programs, classes, and marketing tactics are now geared towards appearance first results, right? Like, what's the first thing that you think of when you think of these fitness programs or when they're marketing to you? It's always some really attractive person with six-pack abs, with great muscles. They have nice veins all over them. And it's never really about the movement or the nutrition or the recovery or how you feel, right? There's some companies like that. I think we're getting better at it. We're moving towards that direction. But for the longest time ever now, it's been strictly like, do you want to look like this? If so, join my program. And so overall, from my experience, the fitness industry has been absolutely ignoring overall movement and health quality or overall athleticism. So athleticism. What is athleticism? A lot of us will immediately kind of turn our heads and ignore this because we don't associate ourselves as being an athlete. But really at the core of what athleticism is, it's essentially just an expression of human design, right? Athleticism is the ability to move the body through free space with control, with confidence, under a wide array of stressful environments. And so you're essentially just learning how to move your body well. What is not human about that? Everyone is an athlete under that definition, okay? So becoming an athlete is one of the most human things you could possibly do for yourself. It's not just a trait for sports. Humans evolved to move through complex environments. They carry loads quickly. They react very quickly. They tolerate physical and mental stress. If we could not adapt and change to different physical environments and barriers and obstacles, we would not have made it this far as we have today. That's what evolution is. The universe is constantly trying to kill life, literally. If something isn't growing, it's dying. That's the universal law. And we need to be constantly adapting. Life adapts, life evolves because of that. And so if we don't know how to build something that's resilient, aka our body, in response to a harsh environment, we die. And so athleticism, again, is an expression of human design. It's an expression of overall biology, right? If you get more athletic, you're able to build a more physically capable body, you will follow the law of the survival of the fittest. Charles Darwinism at its finest. The survival of the fittest. This is what causes evolution. This is what determines the animal kingdom and who is the most powerful in the animal kingdom. And right now on planet Earth, humans are. Right? Not because necessarily we're the most physically capable, but we have the most well-rounded capabilities in terms of body and mind. So inherently, an athletic body must carry the right amount of mass to move freely. So too much or too little makes movement extremely inefficient or prone to injury. You carry too much mass, too much fat on you, even too much muscle, right? You become clunky, you're not springy, you're not super agile, and you can start to move slowly. And so, from an evolutionary perspective, you're more prone to predation. People are, a jaguar or other predators will hunt you down very easily. And same thing if you don't carry enough mass, right? You're just going to get injured super quickly, especially if it's not enough of the right mass. You don't have a lot of muscle mass. Your connective tissue isn't very strong or thickened or stiff. You start moving really quickly and you immediately get injured. So being athletic usually results in optimal health markers as well, because it is essentially improving your overall health. More muscle, more endurance, more coordination equals better metabolic health and thus cognition at the end of the day. We know that muscle is a metabolic organ that helps keep you insulin sensitive. It improves metabolic health. Training your heart through endurance exercise makes you live longer, gives you higher energy levels, and lowered inflammation. And that inherently improves all of the health of your cells in every single part of your body, including your brain. So it improves your cognition, your level of emotional depth, etc. And again, cannot stress this enough. Metabolic health is the core of all health, right? Metabolism is the sum of all chemical reactions in the body, food into energy. It involves the production of hormones, production of neurotransmitters. And so your metabolism is the reason you can experience life at all to begin with. And so a healthier metabolism, the better of a human experience that you will have. It plays a role in improving heart function, improves your mood, decreases blood sugar, decreases cholesterol, decreases fat mass, decreases inflammation, decreases blood pressure. All of these things are associated with having improved metabolic health as a result from exercise or nutrition, but in this case, exercise. And this, again, improves the overall human experience. And of course, nutrition matters, but you can kind of think about it in two ways with nutrition and movement. Nutrition mitigates the stress in the body, right? Eating is inherently a damaging inflammatory process. And so by eating the right foods, you can mitigate that stress. Movement trains the body to withstand that stress. So nutrition can, there's a little bit of overlap here. It's not super black and white, but for the most part, you can think about it in these two buckets. Nutrition mitigates stress that the body has to experience. Movement trains the body to withstand stress. And so why care about this in the first place at all? I mean, if I haven't already made it clear, it makes you a better human, improved human experience, and thus life overall. Why care beyond that? Because there's really two major skills in life: the science of achievement, the art of fulfillment. You need to understand that achieving anything worthwhile in life requires a strategy. And to feel fulfilled in life requires a certain level of our understanding of who you are and where you fit in the world. And that's very unique. So there's a science to achievement. We know that. There's papers on it. We know how to develop a strategy to build a good business, for an example. Art of fulfillment, you can get fulfillment from a million different things. It's getting fulfillment for someone is as unique as that individual alone. It's an art. And so with achievement, your body and mind must be durable and adaptive for decades to achieve anything great in life. Mastery of any subject, to build a business, to build extremely high quality relationships. You have to be able to withstand stress for long periods of time, because anything worthwhile takes years of effort. If you don't have a body that is capable, you're not going to live very long. You're not going to be able to output stuff that requires effort for very long. And for fulfillment, to feel fulfilled, you need a mind capable of a broad emotional range and a body capable of participating fully in life. If you don't have a body that allows you to explore the world with ease, to give you the energy to interact with a bunch of people, to do a bunch of work every day, to step out of your house and experience life and actually feel a whole range of emotions, happy and sad, you're not going to feel fulfilled. You have no emotion. You interpret the world negatively. Your experiences are limited. Your opportunities are limited. And so literally by being a better athlete, you're opening up a world of opportunities for your achievement and your fulfillment in life. So think about it this way. When you lose athleticism, it shrinks the range of opportunities available to you as a person. Period. It does. Obviously, you can get too invested in athleticism and make that your whole identity and whole personality, and that takes away from life as well. But if you find the right amount of time that you can invest into becoming a better athlete, that will open up the range of opportunities available to you, because you'll be able to experience more. You'll be able to do more with more energy. You'll be able to travel more. And so think things like writing a book, traveling the world, creating a business, completing a marathon, creating art, develop meaningful relationships. Any goal that you might think is worthwhile, you can achieve easier with a more durable and athletic body. These all seem like athleticism has nothing to do with it, but it really is all connected. How well your body and mind functions directly correlates to how much you can accomplish in this one life. And so how do we train athleticism? There's 7 pillars of athleticism. 1 is strength. This is force production and control. Coordination is essentially organizing movement efficiently. Number 3 is mobility, your ability to access ranges of motion voluntarily. Number 4 is endurance, sustained movement for long periods of time. Number 5 is power, fast movement under load. 6 is resilience, tissue and mental tolerance to stress. So not only your ability to withstand injury, your joints and connective tissues ability to withstand large forces and not snap or break under pressure, but also for your mind to not snap or break under pressure. Speed, number 7, how quickly the body can move, period. And so just having one or a few of these, rather than all of them, severely limits what you're capable of, both athletically, but also in your life as a human. So the best example I could think of what represents overall athleticism is sprinting. Hands down, sprinting. Write this down because this is very important, and most of us have not sprinted in a while. So how does sprinting represent longevity as a whole? It displays all 7 pillars. You cannot fake sprinting. You see someone sprinting, you immediately know if they're an athlete or not, okay? They're either going to get injured, or they look ridiculous, or they're extremely slow. It's because it's extremely high impact. You're experiencing 4 to 5 times your body weight per impact every step, depending on how quickly and forcefully you're sprinting. And it requires you to also run over long distances, right? Sprinting doesn't inherently require a bunch of endurance, but depending on how long you're doing it for, it can start to require endurance. And so a true sprint is shorter, like 100 meters, and you will feel yourself out of breath from that, and you can build endurance from just 100 meters alone. But also 1 to 3 mile runs, that's endurance. And if you do 1 to 3 mile runs with fast paces, very fast paces, like 6 minutes a mile or less, which sounds unobtainable for most people, but I would say it's very obtainable for most people. Those are practically controlled sprints. You're basically doing strides. Like your legs are outputting a ton of force to get your body moving that quickly. Your legs are moving so fast to cover miles within 5 to 6 minutes, moving a body that is 100, 200 pounds. So that requires a lot of leg strength. And we know there's a ton of research and literature on this. Go look it up yourself. Lower body muscle mass is associated with better longevity and aging. More muscle mass in general is associated with better longevity and aging, but specifically having big quads, big calves, big butt, big hamstrings, because those are such large muscle groups of the body, it's associated with less dementia, improved cognition, reduced risk of all-cause mortality. So strong legs are required for sprinting. Sprinting and aging. So sprinting, as I discussed, is very much a lost skill. When's the last time you sprinted? Chances are it's been a while. And it's not because age makes this impossible. You can go learn and sprint right now. I don't care how old you are. You might not be the world-class sprinter or the best sprinter in the world, but you can go out and learn. You're not going to be great at the first time, and you're going to have to build up to it, but you can learn to sprint again. And it's because our environment doesn't require it anymore, right? We're not doing sports. We don't have to run away from anything. We've basically conquered the world. There's humans all over the world in cities and cars and best technology. We can just order food off of DoorDash and Uber Eats. And this limitation, in my opinion, is extremely damaging to the human body. The fact that we don't have any sort of sense of urgency in our movement at all is the reason why we have increased mortality rates from disease. We literally have to go to a gym. We have to go to a place and structure exercise because none of our work anymore requires any sort of physical activity, which is insane. And trained individuals, right, people who have been doing sprinting for a while or have been a lifelong athlete, can maintain fast sprints, world-class times and levels of speed to their sprints into their 40s and even 50s. And so you can look at this graph here. You can see men's and women's 100-meter sprint times from age 35 to 100, right? So we start off around 35 years old. People are still, men and women, in 10 to 11 seconds, they're able to sprint 100 meters. If you don't know, Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world, ran the 100-meter dash sub 10 seconds. And I think it was like 9.7, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there. And you only start seeing a sharp increase right around 80 years old, okay? We still have men and women running almost a 15-second 100-meter dash at 75 years old. And obviously, you get to 100, and that starts to climb pretty rapidly, 30 seconds for a 100-meter dash. But still, that is very impressive if you maintain that. This is the same across almost all running distances, marathons, mile times, 5Ks. We have another graph here, marathon running time. And again, right around 70 years old is where you start to see that large inflection point We have people, men and women, by the time they're 60, they're still running roughly 150-minute marathon times, which is just over an hour. For women, it's closer to 200, but that is incredibly impressive. And it just goes to show, yes, aging matters. Of course it matters. But I'd argue most people have larger mental barriers rather than physical when it comes to their physical fitness, their health, their longevity, their energy. So getting into the 7 pillars, strength, how to train strength. Hopefully you can apply this to your life moving forward. This isn't going to be a necessarily comprehensive build your own program, workshop, or anything like that. But hopefully you can get some good ideas on how to begin structuring your program and become more creative and playful with your programming and exercise routines to start training overall athleticism. How to train strength. Strength is the ability to move an object or your body weight from point A to point B. Doesn't matter how fast it is, you just got to get it from point A to point B. It's raw force production against some sort of weight or resistance. It requires some form of progressive overload, and it builds the foundation for all other physical traits. Strength is the foundation. This is why we're starting here. Without muscle, without pure, raw ability to move, nothing else can be done. So examples that you can train for strength, things like squats, presses, rows, lunges, hip hinges, loaded carries, spinal flexion, and extension under control. So that's when you're taking your spine and bending it over, bending it back. So you follow these 7 core movements: squats, presses, rows, lunges, hip hinges, loaded carries, spinal flexion, extension. You will develop great strength. You really don't need more movements than this. You do 1 exercise per week of these 7 movements, you're covered. And you can see strength, it raises the ceiling for all other movement, period. A great example of pure raw strength is the strongman competition. There's a picture of Hafthor Bjornsson, monster of a man. In his prime, I believe he was close to 400 pounds or even above 400 pounds. And he holds a deadlift world record of, I forget how much he deadlifted, but it was over 1,000 pounds. He's the definition of raw strength. He does not move well. Don't get me wrong. He doesn't move well. Like, he definitely could not sprint, I'd say, do anything quickly, but man, he is freakishly strong. Coordination. So this is the second most important skill, I'd say, because if you have a bunch of muscle, but you don't know how to coordinate it properly, it's not really useful. So it's the ability to control movement with finesse, right? Exercises that challenge balance, timing, rhythm, or precision. It requires your nervous system to organize movement very efficiently. And this often really exposes your weak links and underused stabilizer muscles. Most coordination exercises will challenge a lot of the smaller muscles that you typically don't use consciously, that are kind of dormant in day-to-day activity. So examples of this are using free weights over machines. So things like where you're using one arm at a time, dumbbells, barbells, stuff where you have to literally balance and coordinate your entire body while moving the weight, really helps with coordination. This is why I typically opt for free weights over machines if I can for most people, because machines are very safe. They're great to get into lifting and helps prevent injury if their form or technique is off. But it definitely makes them less stable and less of an athlete over time if they're not willing to progress towards free weights. You can also do single limb exercises, so single leg RDLs, pistol squats, single leg or single arm rows or pull downs. You can also do asymmetrical loading, so you can do like farmer's carries while only carrying a weight or a dumbbell on one hand, one side, or doing a bench press but with dumbbells and you're only doing one side at a time. Using unstable or changing environments. So there's a bamboo bar that you'll see sometimes on social media or the internet that people use, and you essentially attach, it's a bendy bar and you attach weights at the end of it. And as you're pressing it up and down and doing rows with it, it'll move around a ton. So you're forced to kind of react to its movement and control it. And then any sort of reaction-based drill, reaction games where, you'll see those athletes in really world-class facilities where they're training reaction time, especially for like quarterbacks, wide receivers, cornerbacks. They'll have like a little game set up on the wall and you have to press these buttons. As soon as it turns green, they have to immediately press it. And they're doing that for, some amount of time per day to train the reaction time. And so coordination improves movement quality and it reduces energy waste. The more efficient you are in moving, the less energy it takes to move. And I think one of the best examples of coordination, in my opinion, is ping pong. Like, it is insane when you watch an Olympic level ping pong game, how fast that ball is going and how small the paddle is. And they're still hitting it back and forth, rallying for a while. I cannot understand that. Obviously, it's from years and years of practice, but that's a great example of having amazing coordination. Mobility. So how to train mobility. Access. This is the ability to access ranges of motion. So, your active control at end ranges, not just your ability to like pull your limb or pull your leg as far back as it can go. That's flexibility. Mobility is your ability to control your limbs and your body at these end ranges of motion. So how far can you spread your legs apart? How far can you put your hand and shoulder and arms overhead? And, how well can you move it at the end ranges of motion? And so examples of this are things like controlled deep squats, squatting as deep as you possibly can, end range isometrics. So think of something like, if you want to get better at touching your toes, as an example, feeling stronger as you're bending down, you can do a deadlift isometric. So you essentially load a weight that you cannot actually lift off the ground at all on a barbell. You reach down, you try and pick it up, and you try to stretch your hamstring as much as possible, and you try and pick up that bar, maybe do it for 5 to 10 seconds, a few sets of that. And it really helps improve your strength at that bottom range of motion. So you'll feel more confident in these more awkward positions with your mobility. You can do loaded stretches. So you can, do a pancake stretch, hamstring stretch, any sort of stretch, and actually load it and press a bunch of load into it while also flexing the muscle. This is also called PNF. So you're stretching the muscle while also flexing it. Slow eccentrics. So eccentrics is just the negative or lowering portion of any sort of exercise. So on a squat, it's when you're coming down. As you're doing low eccentrics, low eccentrics, you're practicing your mobility coming down and lengthening the muscles. And also just in general, full range lifts. I think it's important to get down that any movement involves some sort of mobility, right? Mobility is more of a spectrum. So simply doing a squat improves your mobility, right? So exercising, getting into a gym, getting onto a good strength program does improve your mobility in some sense. But it's usually the mobility that we tend to lack is the ability to move our joints at the end ranges of their motion. So think of your shoulder joint. If you want to do this practice with me, you can kind of just reach back as far as you can go, bring all the way over your head, your arm, and come all the way forward. How easy is it for you to go through your full range of motion without any sort of pain, without any sort of discomfort? How strong are you in those kind of, awkward end range motions? For endurance, this is a sustained movement for very long periods of time. A great example of this is Kipchoge, or any marathon runner for that example. He was the first man. Obviously, it was a bit curated, but he was the first man to run a sub 2-hour marathon. That requires you to run miles at, I believe it's like 4-minute pace, or somewhere within the 4-minute pace range, which is absurd. Anyone go and try that out yourself. It's basically like sprinting. And so this is your ability to resist fatigue, is what endurance is. Efficient energy use, and its repeated output over time. Examples are steady state cardio, long runs or rides, circuits at sub-max effort, high rep bodyweight work, anything where you're sustaining a heart rate for very long periods of time, 30 minutes or up. Endurance expands your work capacity. It also increases your energy a lot because your body gets more efficient at creating energy. Because to move for long periods of time, your cells and mitochondria have to be extraordinarily efficient at creating energy, otherwise known as ATP. Power. How to train power. I love power. I just love the word power. And also when you see someone who, like an Olympic athlete as an example, most of them, or Olympic weightlifter as an example, you will see that they have tons of power, and you'll see what I mean. So it's fast movement under load. So it's a little bit different from speed. Speed is just how fast you can move, period. And it's usually just with your body weight. When sprinting is a good example. With power, it's how fast can you move a weight. So strength is, how much weight can you move. Power is how fast can you move that weight. So it's force times velocity. And this is expressing strength extremely quickly. Things like jumps, throws, Olympic lift variations, kettlebell swings, sprint starts. And so power is kind of strength expressed in time. That's how you can think about it. And so this is a picture of an Olympic athlete. You'll see them doing the power cleans, the power snatches. Those lifts in particular require an immense amount of power. You have to be able to move very large amounts of weight very quickly, which is an incredible feat of strength and athleticism. I say power is one of those things that can almost encapsulate a lot of the pillars of athleticism if you do enough of it. Resilience. So how to train resilience. This is a unique one that I actually really like. It's tissue and mental tolerance to stress. So your capacity to absorb and recover. This is your structural and psychological durability. It's staying functional and you're still able to do what you need to do under high levels of fatigue. So you can think of Alex Honnold. If you don't know who that is, he recently climbed a massive skyscraper. I don't know how this guy does it, but he's the best free solo climber in the world. If you don't know what free solo means, it means he does it with no equipment, no gear, and he does it by himself. I believe the skyscraper he climbed was about 1,600 feet tall. And before this, he actually did a much more crazy feat, which was climb the wall of El Capitan in Yosemite, which was nearly 3,000 feet tall. And this man is insanely resilient mentally and physically, right? Because to do a free solo with no equipment, and you have one mistake and you fall to your death, you're in a position where you make one mistake, you fall to your death for hours. The amount of mental resilience that requires is otherworldly, right? Alex Honnold is a special human being. His amygdala is a bit more quieter than most people's. They actually got this measured in an MRI. And so in response to any fear or anxiety or typical situations that the amygdala would light up for other people, your amygdala is this part of the brain that is associated with like primal reactive behavior. So you get scared or you feel anxiety or fear, your amygdala activates. And his is a bit quieter than most. So I think that's genetic, but also something that he brought up is that he's been doing rock climbing and exposing himself to really scary situations since a young age. And so I think by conditioning your body and your mind, by putting yourself into stressful positions, you eventually understand what real fear is a result of. And that's like true life or death situations. And I think over time, by being exposed to that, this is also known as exposure therapy in psychology, you can essentially quiet the amygdala and become fearless. Anyway, he's a great example. Things to train resilience. Also for him as well, to climb these giant skyscrapers and walls of rock for hours on end, you also need to have incredible resilience in your finger joints, your forearms. Like the fact that he's able to do this and support his body weight for the entire time without getting injured and complete the climb, again, shows just how much physical resilience that his body, his ligaments, his connective tissue has adapted to. So examples on how to train resilience, and there is some crossover with other pillars of athleticism, of course, but isometrics is another good one, as usual, because isometrics, you're training your ability to, and isometric is where you're pressing against an immovable object, right? You're trying to lift up a weight that cannot be moved off the ground, or you're trying to press a weight that cannot be moved off your chest. And so by doing max effort isometrics, you're training your joints and your muscles, your connective tissue to withstand maximal level of effort. And that helps build tendons, actually stiffens tendons over time, it stiffens bone. Even just resistance training and strength training does that as well to an extent. And in general, any sort of exposure to discomfort trains your resilience, especially mentally. I'm a big believer in my training, especially for athletes and in my programming, when I'm looking to compete, when I'm looking to do a marathon, do a bodybuilding competition, do high rocks, anything that requires any amount of physical performance, I aim to put myself in that situation mentally before the competition even comes. I break my mind, I break my body before it happens. I did this for my marathon training. I do it continually over and over again. It's not sustainable to do it every single workout, of course, because again, there's diminishing returns that you get from exercising too much and too intensely. But I believe by going past that amount to put your mind under a sheer amount of mental stress is very beneficial, because on race day, when race day comes, when competition day comes, you know what you can handle. You know how much pain you can tolerate. And this is another concept discussed by Stephen Magnus, which is a world-renowned running coach, and he used to work for Nike. He was actually a whistleblower for Nike. And he discusses something called the central governor. So your central governor is kind of this idea or theory that your mind is the central governor for all of your bodily processes, and it dictates how much effort you can put forth. So an example would be they place athletes, or you get placed in a very hot environment and you try to run in that environment. Your brain senses the heat through your nerves, the cells in your skin, and it dials back the amount of force that you can put through your legs to run, because it knows that if it exceeds a certain core temperature in your body, you will start to physically damage yourself. And the central governor is also controlled by your perception. If you haven't experienced something difficult before, your central governor will think this is too much. And so by exposing yourself to immense amounts of discomfort before the competition even happens, you can push yourself to a limit that you didn't know you had. And this is extremely useful. I've done this, again, with my marathon training. I ran 16 miles in 90-degree heat, and there was no reason for me to really be doing that. And I made that an intentional decision that day to see how much I could really push myself. And so I sustained a pace that I don't normally do, with barely any water. I was dehydrated. I probably was not a good decision. That wasn't really intentional. In 90-degree heat, and by the end of it, I was on the ground. The ground was moving, and I almost blacked out. I couldn't see. I cried because it was so hard. My body was just in shock. And I've done this many times through my training. Don't recommend it necessarily all the time, but it absolutely helps you become a better athlete and unlocks levels of athletic performance and physical capability you didn't know you had. And I think this is my superpower. This is my secret. This is most other world-class athletes' superpower when they're turning up to compete and become really good at something physically. They have broken their bodies before they got on the starting line. And finally, we have speed, the last pillar of athleticism. And this is how quickly the body can move. Maximal velocity, your coordination at very high outputs. And this is really comes down to training your nervous system to be extremely efficient. So how fast can you move your arms side to side, your legs back and forth? And examples of this are sprinting, short accelerations, very fast cyclical movements. It's really a skill of the nervous system. And so one of the best examples of this is sprinting. And one of the best athletes in the world to demonstrate pure speed of what the human body is capable of is Usain Bolt, none other than him. And so that kind of wraps up the 7 pillars of athleticism. And the main takeaway I want you to get from today, if anything, is that the body is a machine comprised of many different parts and cogs. Strength, endurance, speed, and resilience are all interconnected. For some reason, the industry and our society has really separated them out to be different things. And we call this being a hybrid athlete, when in reality, it's just called being an athlete, right? You neglect one, the entire system underperforms and injury risk increases. So strength without mobility leads to poor movement and injury risk. Endurance without strength, you begin to break down under fatigue. This is why strength training is highly recommended for endurance runners, because you get towards the end of a marathon, you'll begin to break down your form and your gait and your posture through fatigue. And that's when having more muscle mass and thicker tendons, and your Achilles tendon, as an example, is very helpful, because it keeps your body moving forward. It keeps that elastic energy going while you're running without the need to push as much force out from your muscles under that fatigue. Mobility without strength as well, that leads to instability and injury, right? If you're extremely mobile and elastic, super flexible, but as soon as you place a load on yourself, you have those people who are quote unquote double jointed, or just have extremely elastic and flexible joints, right? Just because they're mobile doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing, right? Because they can over hyperextend their joint and get injured. So you need to have the strength to withstand that mobility when it's needed. And so it may seem overwhelming to include all this stuff at once, and I understand why you could think that, but it really does not require a ton of time. All you really need is to get creative with your workout program. You can use AI for this. I highly recommend use ChatGPT. You can put a prompt for it and just say, please include all 7 pillars of athleticism into my program. Here's the amount of time that I have, and then you refine it from there. But really all you need are 2 to 4 well-structured sessions per week, right? You can get all of the 7 pillars of athleticism in there, just in 2 to 4 structured sessions per week. Even just 2 sessions per week, you can probably do this. You can have one kind of longer 1-hour day that does some sort of strength training, some sort of coordination work, some sort of endurance work, or not endurance work, but some sort of a power and speed and resilience training. And then the other day would be more so like your endurance day, where you do maybe a long run, and then you can end with strides or sprints to also train a bit more power, speed, and coordination. And so with a balanced training approach, it would cover everything. And so although it sounds like a lot, it's because we tend to think we have to get really good at all of these things, like really, really good, when in reality, we should just be okay with making slow progress in all of this. Health is being good at a lot of things, not just one. And so by trying to train all of these things at once, with only 2 to 4 sessions per week, yes, progress will be a little bit slower, but at the end of the day, it compounds over time a ton, and you will feel the effects just 6 months down the road, and you'll become a better athlete. You'll move better. Your movement quality will be noticeably much better. Your resilience to injury will become much more noticeable. Coordination, your balance, your speed, and your health overall will improve. And again, it's about being good at a lot of things of your physical health. And even psychological science and identity frameworks also agree with this, right? You can't just invest all of your identity into one thing, because as soon as that part of your identity collapses, say you put all of your identity into work, if something goes wrong with work or you're just depressed, you don't have anything else to lean on. Same concept here. If you invest all of your being into being a powerlifter or being really good at strength, something goes wrong with your powerlifting career, or you're not as strong, or you get injured, that entire identity collapses and you have nothing else to fall back on. So I hope this is helpful. Please give a share, a like, and subscribe if you can. Share this with somebody that you think this would be helpful for. Really appreciate it. This is what helps the channel grow. Thank you for listening, and have a great week.